and then I'm going to share my screen. If it will let me. There we go. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks so much.
You're muted, by the way.
Okay. God. Okay, well, thank you everyone for being here. Sorry about the Discord issues this week. They may have done some sort of update and I missed it and it's not working. I'm not sure, but we'll definitely make sure we have it figured out for the next week. And in any case, thanks for the few that did make it over here. Welcome to the 18th governance call and the first of 2023. Yeah, just like a few housekeeping things. I mean, for the few that are here, I think they know. If you have a question, either write it in the chat or raise your hand. And yeah, if the call will be recorded. And yeah, please be mindful and respectful of everyone who is either speaking or asking questions throughout the call. Thanks. So I will be your co-host today. Abby is on vacation. She, on a well-deserved vacation, but she'll be back towards the end of the month. So she'll be on the next governance call. But for today, you have to deal with me. Quick agenda. There's not a ton of like actual governance proposal updates to go over. So I'm kind of going to quickly go through the first two, so the governance proposal updates and the governance team updates. And then we'll spend a little bit more time on the transition to the DAO update. A lot of time, I would say, the majority of the time on the Radicle grants update, in particularly in regards to the Otterspace, testing that they're doing right now within Radicle grants. And then that also will kind of like lead into a broader, bigger discussion around non-tokenized governance within the RadicleDAO, and looking at a bit more context around that as well. And then I want to do just like a soft intro, if there's time, a soft intro to governance process and coordination updates. These are some things that Abby and I have been brainstorming over the last few weeks, and we started formalizing into some written posts, and we'll hopefully be sharing those end of January, early February, to get like start a more formal discussion around them. But I wanted to just briefly introduce them, so folks had them, kind of in their minds, already kind of spark some thoughts, and then have something also to reference back to when those posts are actually posted. So yeah, we'll just jump right in. First, the proposal updates and reminders. We have seen all of these proposals before. It's just a few quick items on each of them. The discussion post from Enzyme to deploy strategic cash on the Enzyme platform is currently on hold right now. Kind of generally all governance or treasury management, treasury diversification items are on hold at the moment, just because we want to take a bit more time to dive a bit deeper into the actual like legal and tax implications that come with different, not only diversification options, but also the setup of a treasury management working group, like what different structures could mean in different tax and legal, under different tax and legal implications. So we're kind of like on hold with that one right now, and kind of all other treasury diversification proposals. We are, and we've communicated this with Enzyme as well. They've been really supportive and are also, doing their own research here. So it'll be nice to be able to work together and also with other ecosystem partners, and get some good input there before moving forward. Just quick notes on 2 temperature checks. The Ecosystem Growth Fund retrospect. Nassar posted this a while ago now, and there's been quite a lot of reaction to the post with a lot of good questions and feedback integrated in there. And Nassar has done a really great job of answering those questions and providing some more context to some of the comments and questions that have been posted there. So I highly recommend taking a look at that. It's the kind of like outcome of this discussion will also help shape the kind of like the future of what's next for the EGF, the Ecosystem Growth Fund, and what other form that possibly could take going forward. And on the Otterspace, the Otterspace badges, we'll also spend quite a bit of time talking about this. But yeah, Grants is currently testing like the implementation of using these badges within Radicle Grants. But yeah, we'll speak more to that later. Quick governance team updates. So first we have the community governance December update. This is the update that's shared in every the update that the governance community governance team shares in every monthly community call. I'll drop the link here in 1 second. There it is. And this this is a this is there if you'd like to take a look at that of what we've been up to the last month specifically. We also posted the 2022 governance wrapped. The 22 wrap that everyone's really been waiting for. That is now live and kind of goes over, it gives like a good overview of like important proposals that happen throughout the year, the evolution of the governance team itself and the focus of governance work throughout the year. There are also like notable initiatives or projects that the governance team had taken on or has been working on. And also some plans and areas of focus for the future. So if you want to take a look at that, the link is right here. Yeah, that's it was really fun to already look at the comparison from 2021. And I'm really excited already to write the one for 2023 because there's going to be a lot that's happening. Quick update on some initiatives that we're working on right now, supporting Apiary and setting up stakeholder interviews. Apiary, as we know, is being funded by a Radicle grant right now to help develop a mission-aligned approach to improving the Radicle governance. The process that the form that this will take is talking to different stakeholders within the Radicle ecosystem, defining pathways for mission-aligned decentralization, and then working with the Radicle and probably more specifically the governance team to refine governance and incorporate those values into that process. And then also supporting the core development org working group and finalizing the core development org proposal. We'll say more to that later as well in a minute. And supporting boredom and drafting the grants org proposal and Otterspace badge usage testing analysis, which we'll also speak more to. So I won't say much there. Some things to keep an eye out for that will be coming soon will be this kind of post regarding governance updates that Abby and I have been thinking about, which I'll touch on today briefly at the end of the call. And also kind of like a V2 of our governance manual. The current governance manual, unofficial, I guess, or official, most official one we have, governance manual currently exists as a README on the forum, which I'll drop here. But yeah, we'll be doing, I'll go over a little bit about that later. And then the other thing to kind of keep an eye out for from us will be the Radicle governance org proposal. So just like the grants will have its own kind of sub-DAO org, governance is also probably going to take the form of an org in an independent independent role within the DAO. So yeah, that's it for that now. The main update or the big update, exciting update on the transition to the DAO side is from the org design work streams, specifically the core development org working group. They have posted the core development org proposal. I am just going to pull it up here. They have posted the core development org proposal. As we have mentioned a few times before, the core development org, the purpose of the core development org will be to kind of take over the funding and coordinating role. So the funding and coordinating of the work that the core teams of Radicle do from the foundation. So in order to do that, we needed to figure out different ways of setting up some sort of coordination structure for the core development org, and this proposal lays that out. The kind of form or the model you see in this proposal is the result of like a design sprint that took place in November, which resulted in 3 different models that were based off of other models that we've seen in the ecosystem, and just kind of like research within Radicle, and like going through based off of like kind of values, design, and like development principles that were identified by the org design work stream earlier in the year. Those 3 models were then presented to 7 different contributors who were wonderful in giving feedback and taking time to go through that with us. That feedback was then taken and formed into like one refined model, and the result of that is what you see in this proposal. So yeah, there was a lot of I won't say blood, I hope no blood, but a lot of like sweat and tears that went into the creation of this. And it would be really great, especially if you're a core contributor of Radicle, to please dive into this. Please take a look at this. We hosted a call. Louis, who's on the call right now, we hosted a call on Monday with core contributors. So core contributors from the core teams, so clients, funding, marketing, community, governance, etc., to go over this proposal and in a bit more depth, and to like provide time to ask questions, or for the contributors to ask questions. We'll be kind of collecting feedback on this initial draft of the proposal over the next 2 weeks, and then we'll use that feedback and incorporate it into a final version of the proposal that will be posted to the community, like to governance, to be voted on February 16th. So, and we'll do another one of those calls, I think, more publicly. This was just more to get like initial feedback of those who would have like be the most affected, or would be like specifically working within that org. But yeah, just wanted to do a call out there. If you haven't taken a look, please do. And yeah, the rest of the other work streams, there were no like notable like significant updates, so I just decided we could glide over those for now. Questions? Anyone? I feel like everyone on the call probably already knows a lot of this. But thought I would pause. Great. So now, yeah, another like quick thing. Sorry about this core development org proposal. It's a lot of this model is kind of like relying on the assumption, or like a key assumption in order for that model to work, is that we'll be using like a non-tokenized governance mechanism that would probably be in the form of something like an Otterspace badge, or an Otterspace badge, or the badges system. So this is also why I wanted to take some time to talk over this with boredom, and then present it, maybe a deeper discussion on like how this possibly could be used on the in the broader DAO. So that's what we're going to do now. So boredom, if you want to share any updates you would like to share, and then if you want to dive into the discussion on Otterspace badges within Radicle grants, you're free to go.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me? Can you see my screen?
Yes, and yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll just start with some slides and tell you kind of like what the roadmap for this looks like. So again, like the whole idea with Otterspace is about distributing influence and making it a bit more equitable. So going from something like how many rad do you have to just how many, like what is your role, and does your role confer any sort of voting power? So it's more like a one person, one vote in terms of the sort of granular governance for each DAO. So what we did in November and December was really just basic setup. We worked with Otterspace team on creating kind of like configuring everything. And we kind of at the end of December, we did an end-to-end test with Snapshot just to kind of see that it works. So I'll show you that after I go through all this, just so you know what kind of like visually what it's doing. The next 2 months is basically going to try to test this out using grants. So there's a few kind of like low-hanging fruit on things that we'd like to do, but that are because they weren't necessarily written out in our original charter. They're kind of worth just voting on, and yeah, being able to garner votes not just from multi-sig members, so not just the 6, currently 5 committee members, but actually get grantees in the mix is the basic idea. So a few ideas like budgeting money to send to our dependencies. So this would be like, after V2 drips comes out, why don't we drip, X% of our budget to projects that we depend on? So I think that one's a pretty low hanging fruit, and is in my opinion, an obvious thing to support, but we'll see. Another thing might be, we've got this idea of like a type 2 grant, which is sort of like just people simply adopting Radicle tooling. So whether it's the SDK or something else, we kind of don't have a lot of bandwidth for these sort of basic grants. So one idea is setting up some amount of budget, throwing it into a quadratic funding pool. And that's just like a question, like, do we want to do that? And that's the kind of thing that we might put up for votes. That would include votes from the community of grantees plus anyone on the multi-sig. And so that's what we'll be doing for the next 2 months, and hopefully get some good learnings from there. Like if things work well or don't work well, what part of the process is sort of slow and arduous and tedious and needs automating, and sort of hopefully feed it back into Otterspace's tooling, and then as far as like our processes, like improve those. And then around March or April is when Otterspace is going to mainnet. So they're currently in Optimism. All of our testing is on Optimism. And so once they go onto mainnet, we'll basically burn everything to the ground. We'll take everything that Grants is doing, put it on mainnet, and have everything well documented for any other DAOs within Radicle, so that it's like core development or anyone else that creates a sub DAO within Radicle. They can look at those docs, see how to onboard people, how to create badges, how to manage badges, how to manage voting processes and all that. And we've already started the documentation, so I'll quickly gloss over that. So this is the basic process that we've come up with so far. Is like, if you've got a proposal, you might put a long form post on Discourse that says, hey, here's a proposal for our sub DAO. And it could be anything from like a governance proposal, in our case, a grant proposal. If you're looking for new headcount, maybe you put like a post that says we're looking for such and such engineer, and you might want to vote on that. I don't know if you'd want that to be public, but that's just an idea. And then once that goes through a discussion, we'd put it up on Snapshot, and Snapshot actually can read what Otterspace tokens people hold, and then allow them or reject, or like allow them to vote or not allow them to vote. And that's what I'll show you in a few minutes. And then once we have that like Snapshot proposal voted on, the multi-sig actually becomes somewhat of an afterthought. It's sort of like once Snapshot a vote passes there, you would just say like the job of the committee is just to rubber stamp that and basically say if the Snapshot says like fund this idea, fund this new project, fund this new grant, fund this new person on the team, their job would just be to approve it financially. And obviously, the interesting thing that this brings up, I won't go into this in too much detail, but it offers an opportunity to offload a lot of the overhead within the centralized overhead that is sort of built into a Gnosis safe or any kind of multi-sig setup where you have 5 people, 6 people, whoever's on it, and those are the only ones that can like review a proposal, vote on a proposal. But then all of a sudden now what we're doing is we're letting anyone that we've handed a token, which is a vetted person, an opportunity to voice their opinion in that second step in the middle there. And so hopefully it should over time, as more and more people come on as contributors, then we can have more and more contribution into like reviewing of proposals or and voicing their opinion about it. So hopefully it should actually make the sort of multi-sig step of all this like much easier. I found it to be kind of the hard part. So visually speaking, this is just right now for grants, but on the left-hand side, the idea here is we have 2 categories of grants. So grantees have their own special grantee vote or badge. And this will show up in their wallet, and it essentially, in a sort of cool way, if you've ever grew up playing video games like on Xbox or PlayStation, like you have this little badge that says like you beat the level, right? So in this case for grantees, like they've got a grant, they've been funded by us, so they've gone through the vetting process, they've written up a detailed application, we've loved it, we've funded it, they finished the work, we paid them for the work, and now they have a badge that says that that's what they've done. So I think on one hand it kind of like hopefully kind of acts as like a nice little token that says like, hey, I did this thing. Which is neat, but also it gives them voting power. And then we just have however many people are on the multi-sig also have 1 badge, 1 vote. So the math here is basically however many grantees have completed their work, we have N number of those badges. And then like however many people are sitting on the multi-sig, we have N number of those. And that all adds up to the total number of votes that we can have. So we go, essentially we go from this sort of like this world where we only have 6 people voting, all of a sudden to this world where we could have like, I don't know, I'm just thinking like, let's say shoot for the moon, like in 5 years, we've had like 100 grantees. Now all of a sudden we're gonna have 106 votes, which means a lot more people giving input. Could mean a lot more like back and forth, but we'll see. And we'll probably adjust things as we go. So the idea here on the right-hand side is, we put a proposal up, it goes on Snapshot, everyone in the community gets to vote, and then whatever the outcome of that vote is, it gets funded on Gnosis Safe, and funding is sent. So I will quickly go over what this actually looks like. So this is what it looks like on Snapshot. This is our little test area. So it's RadicleGrants.org. And I've got this little like test. So I'm signed in as Boredom, and you all know me, like I'm on the grants committee. So I can come in here and I can like say, yeah, like I like this. And it says I have 1 vote. That's my voting power. This is based on an Otterspace badge. So I'd come in here, sign the vote. Great. So my vote's in, and now you can see I've got 1 vote. Now if I sign into another account, which is not Boredom, just some other random account, let's say I don't like this proposal, I'm going to vote no on it, and it tells me, oops, you don't have voting power. So that's the gist of it. You can kind of think of it as like that's the idea, and that's the sort of power of it. It's very simple but pretty powerful. So that means like me as a committee member, I can vote. If a grantee had a badge, which our grantees do have badges, they could come in here and say yes or no. And it's pretty simple. It's just like a little configuration, a little JSON configuration. So like I said, with 2 different kind of badges for grantees and committee members, they have equal weight. We could do complex things like weighting of different types of badges and so forth. For now, we're keeping it simple. It's pretty simple, just so you just put a little configuration in here, and then it reads it. So yeah, we're gonna start testing this with some of those simple ideas, and hopefully have some really great notes for everyone. So far, we keep our notes in our repo, and we have like a section on management. So this would be like for someone like me who's like trying to set up a DAO and figure out like, how do I set the whole thing up from square one, and Yeah, it's got like notes on like here's how to add your badges, here's how to mint badges, here's how to configure badges, which is that JSON you saw. And it kind of just goes also into just managing badges. So yeah, and we'll build this out as we go along, but it's fairly well documented. I think anyone could actually set up whatever they want at this point. Any questions? Cool, great. Well, that's it for me.
Thank you so much for going over that in such detail. I think this was like a really good. This is like the context that I kind of wanted before jumping into the next part of the discussion. And just as like a FYI, like this next part, it's going to be a lot more zoomed out. It's going to be more of kind of like general overview of how these badges and like non-tokenized. Well, first of all, like kind of just like the importance like of why we could use this. I think Boredom also touched on this as well. But yeah, kind of like the importance of why it would be nice to use a mechanism like this. And then, but yeah, kind of more focusing on like an overview of like what throughout the broader DAO, not going specifically into the core development org or a specific org. We just got some folks joining, so I'm just gonna let those folks in. So yeah. But I'll be referencing a lot of what Boredom has mentioned already in the call as we move forward here too. And I'll try to make it quick. So basically, just kind of like zooming back out. So if we're looking at like governance within Radicle right now, we have the existing governance, the token governance process and mechanism today, which is used for any on-chain action. And a non-tokenized governance process is kind of this like emerging idea that we possibly could use for internal coordination and consensus, but that also could lead to potentially on-chain actions as well in different ways. So if we take like a little bit more specific look at what that means, in tokenized governance, like used to vote on-chain actions such as treasury distributions, updates to contract parameters, and upgrades to the governance system. The mechanism in which, or like the tools in which are used to do that are the RAD token and snapshot, along with any voting portal. So Boardroom and Tally are the ones that we usually use. And Sybil previously. And in terms of voting power, 1 token is equal to 1 vote. If we look at a non-tokenized governance mechanism, which is kind of what we have been exploring, it's used for it can be used for multiple things. So besides governance, it can also be it is a form of membership, a symbol of membership to either the DAO itself, specific sub-DAOs, specific teams within sub-DAOs, etc. It can also mean access to certain votes, to be a part of certain channels or groups, etc. So and of course the governance part as well. It can also the symbol or like the mechanism of how that works is in this case a non-transferable soulbound token or badge, so from Otterspace and Snapshot. So it's an off-chain form of voting. And then for the badge, in terms of like how much power a badge has, that can vary. So as Boredom mentioned or presented in his presentation, the badges in the grants program are all equal voting. So we can just say maybe 1 badge, 1 vote. There are possibilities to do those in different to weight those votes based on different parameters, and we'll go a little bit into that here as well. So yeah, so as Boredom already kind of went over, badges in the grants case represent membership and some sort of like governance power influence within the Radicle grants program, and how decisions are made on what grants to fund. All of the badges have equal voting power. Voting is off-chain by a snapshot. But then the result of that snapshot vote, as Boredom was saying, is then kind of rubber stamped by the committee. So the result of the snapshot vote is taken into consideration by the committee, and then it's up to the committee, though, or it's relying on the trust of the committee to then implement those results in a decision. So there's no like hard power. There's no like direct like contract or like like direct power over the end of the decision in the grants model at the moment. Other possibilities that could happen, and Boredom mentioned a few of these already as well. And this is also how we're kind of thinking about how it could be used in different parts of the DAO, or like in the broader DAO, or specifically within the core development org or other orgs. Our badges could also have an additional reputation mechanism or score attached to them. So on top of this membership and governance power or influence that the badges have in grants, you could also tie other like specific reputation scores to the badges that would also grant you eventually more voting power or access to something specific. And this would rely on like relationships or integrations of Otterspace badges into other tools, like reputation tools. And there are many. Different badges could have weighted power based on role, contributions, etc. This is something Boredom and I also already touched on. So let's say the client's team all have badges representing or stating that they're like proving that they're in the client's team. But let's say the client's lead, the team lead, has a badge saying that he's the team lead or she's the team lead, and they have a weighted voting power. So it's like 2-to-1 compared to the other badges. Or you could have it over time. So say the longer a contributor is there, the more weighted their voting power gets over time. There could be many different, and as Boredom kind of demonstrated as well, the really nice thing about Otterspace badges is that it's so highly customizable. The possibilities are kind of endless on that front. It's really just like a decision, and we'll come down to a decision of like what we want, which is pretty cool. And then so in regards to like this kind of like hard power that I mentioned, so another possibility to bring the results of an off-chain like badge snapshot like vote is to use a tool like a Zodiac reality module that would take the result of that off-chain vote and automatically trigger an on-chain action, which is also pretty cool. It gives a little bit more of like a solid direct line of execution power to the Otterspace badges. So there's a lot of possibilities as we can see. The question is kind of, I just wanted to like touch on this again just to make it like pretty clear of like why is this cool, like what is this solving. The influence in the project, like within Radicle, is currently, as we know, disproportionately distributed among early team members and supporters. So the more rad someone has, the more voting power they have, and that is, yeah, you can see it. And you know, on any of our public voting platforms, like there it's a very disproportionate distribution of voting power currently within Radicle, but I think also in most projects. And a non-financialized form of influence, so Otterspace badges or any like non-financialized, non-tokenized mechanism of voting that can be earned or can be distributed and earned, allows for contributors to have a more dynamic form of influence within the project. So an example, well, without getting too much into the weeds, the core contributors in the core development org, there's currently like a limited ability for core team members to formally voice their opinion in informal yet still really important decisions within not the within the project, but also like within the core development org. For example, approving the annual mission or vision. That wouldn't be an on-chain vote in any case, but it's still a really important like element of you know, the kind of cohesion and development of Radicles to have this unified vision. And if one person or a few people are drafting that versus or approving it, like versus like having every member of the core development org approving it, like that's a really cool, that opens up like a really cool possibility there. Electing team members into specific leadership roles, like there's kind of a few different ways we've thought about using this mechanism, which I'm not going to get too deeply into. If you want to see those specific examples, please go read the core development org proposal. But yeah, this is just kind of to like give a high level vision of why that's pretty cool. And like tools like Otterspace allow for this really highly customizable voting mechanism that is based more on membership to a team or an org or the DAO in general than how many tokens the individual holds, which I think opens up a lot of possibilities and a lot of opportunity. Disclaimer though on this still does not fully solve for the disproportionate distribution of token voting power that we see today in Radicle. But there are other initiatives that are trying to tackle this. So the phase 0 transition to the DAO proposal, for example, a big part of that was distributing RAD tokens to core contributors that have been with the project, who have started with the project post token creation. So like post the token launch, that was in February of 2021. Because, you know, core contributors to Radicle, they're working like either daily or very consistently on like the development of Radicle, and their input into decisions within the project are extremely valuable. So we want to like be able to just not only for them to have a bit more say like in the actual governance process. So like that's like one example of how that's being addressed on like an actual token like voting power distribution level. But also like kind of exploring these or developing these like alternative ways to hold an influence power or to earn influence in the project. So beyond token voting is also like a really cool element of it as well. So yeah, there's still a long way to go. I don't want to make this sound like we have it, this is it, like we have it all solved. This is still going to be an issue going forward, but it's kind of like I just wanted to highlight that it's kind of a step in the right direction. And I hope that that's also clear to others. I'll pause here. If there's any questions or if anybody wanted to add anything, there's a lot of really smart people on this call too that can add a lot of context. So if anybody wanted to add anything or have any questions. Okay, we can do, and I think in regards to like the core development org and what exactly that will look like, that was a question in our call on Monday, and we'll address that in a little bit more detail, not on this call today, but in the future, either on calls relating to that specifically or in posts or in a future governance call, because I think that's like an important you know, thing to highlight of also like the technical underpinnings of what this all would look like. That will definitely come to light in a bit more like clear form as we go forward too. I just wanted to this very kind of like almost theoretical, but wanted to make sure that we touched on it so people are like very clear as to like why we're even doing this or what benefit this actually has. So we only have 2 minutes left. And again, yeah, apologies, that's completely my fault. I will continue just to quickly go over the few kind of governance changes that we've been thinking about just very briefly. And then I'll like give the opportunity for folks to ask if they want me to add a little bit more color on any of them right now, just so we have it recorded. But feel free to jump. And thanks everyone who's here and for being flexible to find the new home for the governance call today. But yeah, so I'll just continue. And if you need to jump, totally fine. But just wanted to make sure we got to this. So yes, this is the soft intro portion of the governance call to the updates and kind of changes to the Radicle governance process, and also some like coordination and resource updates as well that Abby and I have been brainstorming and now already started like developing actually over the last few weeks. So yeah, this is by no means, by the way, like final or like you know, fully developed yet. This is still, and it won't be even until we get like more feedback from other folks, like after we actually formally post these things. But like I said in the beginning of the call, just really wanted to give a general overview or just like a soft intro so folks are somewhat familiar with them as we go forward. So these are really boring slides, but so it's just kind of a list, but I'll just go through them one by one. So governance, so all the updates on this slide are really focusing on like the governance process itself. So key updates to the on-chain governance process would be places where voting and proposal creation takes place. In the past, I mentioned this earlier in the call, in the past, voting has taken place on Sybil for on-chain and Snapshot for off-chain. Sybil has kind of, it's not really being maintained, and it doesn't have the functionality that we need it to have anymore. And there's recently been some like really cool platforms that have been developed and launched, including Boardroom and Tally, that have all of the integrations and pull directly from integrations of Snapshot, oh my gosh, Snapshot, and also pull directly from the governance contracts. So Boardroom and Tally are kind of the places you'll see us referencing more often to go vote. It also makes creating a proposal so easy. You just connect your wallet, and you can create also Snapshot proposals directly on these platforms as well. And yeah, it's pretty slick on either of them. So you'll see us referencing or directing folks to those two going forward for now. Removing the temperature check phase from the governance process. We felt that a lot of people were already just like, the temperature check was originally thought to just be like an initial share of an idea, you know, and then in the discussion phase would go into more of like a draft of a proposal. But we felt, or we've kind of experienced, that most people would just already be posting like a draft of a proposal as a temperature check. So we also just feel to simplify and like streamline the governance process going forward, to remove this, and yeah, just kind of make that a little bit easier. Introducing proposal types. And this is something I won't go super deep into right now, but just in terms of proposals, we kind of did an analysis of different proposal types that we've had over the last, you know, in our existing governance process from the start, and also just thinking about different types of proposals that we'll definitely be seeing going forward. There's like executable ones, I guess I'll just briefly define as proposals that require an on-chain action, either funding or some sort of like on-chain change. Those will be defined as executable proposals. Social and consensus are more, they don't require an on-chain action, but they do require like DAO-wide community consensus on different things. And this is, and again, we'll dive into those maybe a bit deeper later. But I just wanted to introduce that, just the concept for now. The next one is introducing proposal versioning. So like a more official and a more consistent like labeling of proposals is essentially what this means. And this is just an example. So let's say it's executable. RGP stands for Radical Governance Proposal, which I know maybe we'll have to speak about because I know like Radical RGP is this this abbreviation is used for a few other things, Radical Grants Program, for example, and the number and then the proposal title. But yeah, this is, again, these are all just like ideas that we've had and like written down and are still subject to change. And then we were thinking about introducing proposal cycles in a monthly form, and each week of the month would have like a certain step in the process to make it extremely easy for people to plan, not only people who are writing the proposals, but also everybody else in the DAO. They know when they will be expected, if expected at all, to vote. And just kind of like to streamline again the process of going through the governance process and participating in the governance process and voting in the form of voting. We're hoping this will make this easier. We'll again reveal more details to this in like a more in the actual proposal, or the post will eventually post itself. Other possibilities that we that aren't technically in the post we have now, but are definitely up for discussion and things that are worth looking into, is upgrading the governance contracts to Compound Bravo. Right now it's on Alpha, and this itself has a lot of changes within it. For example, one of them is adding the ability to abstain from a vote rather than having to vote for or against. And there's a few in like some things like this. And then there's also just like a few more kind of like functionality customization elements to upgrading to Bravo would mean. So this is something that we've been thinking about and considering. But yeah, we'll continue that discussion as well. If anybody has any like specific comments or thoughts on that, please feel free to share. And then quorum changes. We've been having this kind of thought or discussion actually for a while now. Abby has an old post from last year at some point talking about changing the quorum. Just currently the quorum is for participation threshold is 4% of the total rad supply. Total rad supply is 100 million, and 4% would be 4 million. So in order for a vote to even be valid, whether it's passed or not, for or against, doesn't matter. You need to have at least 4 million tokens voting in the system. We've talked about changing the percentage on that to be the 4% possibly of the available rad supply. So not the total of 100 million, but available, meaning what isn't locked up in the treasury, for example, or just changing the percent in general. So instead of 4, it's something else. And then another thought that I kind of been throwing around, I still need to do more research on, and would love if anybody has like a specific example or knows of any other project who's tried this, of making either a double quorum or of having a percent and like a number of voters rather than the number of tokens, or like having that by itself. So like making a quorum based, instead of it being on the number of tokens, like, because you want theoretically to encourage diversity in the governance process, and like then your number of tokens would still have a weight, but it would still votes would still then have at least like a minimum number of like a diverse like opinion. So like a minimum of whatever, 10, 20, 30, you know, like could be anything, but it's just an idea to throw out there as well. There's also a time lock, which I think this is also an element of the Bravo upgrade. But so it's basically a mechanism that allows users to exit a system before a decision execution if they disagree with the given decision. So say there's a vote and they don't agree with the result of the vote, and it will change something really significantly about the project or funding or something like this. It gives before there's like a wait period essentially before that proposal or the action actually is executed on chain to allow people to exit the system if they don't agree with it, if they really feel that strongly about it. So that's another thing that we could think about. And then private voting is also something that I've seen a lot popping up here and there around the industry. And this is something I'm definitely planning on looking into more, but it'd be really interesting to hear if anybody already had like really specific thoughts or feelings towards this. It basically is like giving, it's like there's a few different tools, I think, for this, but it basically will like hide the vote. And I think they do different things, but the main one that I'm aware of is that everybody votes, but it shows you the total number of tokens that are voted, and I think the total number of like people, but it doesn't reveal who. It just shows like the result, or it doesn't show any of that. It just shows the result, like if it passes or not in the end. So this is something that it would be really interesting if folks had more specific like feedback on already. But I'll definitely be looking into this more as well. And we'll include these other possibilities, I think, in our post, hopefully with a little bit more research and context as well by the time we post it. So yeah, we can have a little bit more of a detailed discussion on it. And then this last slide, and I promise this is it, and it's really short, are kind of just some coordination and resource updates that most of these we've already done, or we've already worked on. So the governance docs, the governance and community docs, they're two different docs pages that we've been working on. Some of you may be familiar with the old Radicle docs pages, which were very the Radicle user focused. But we thought it would be a good idea to create a more formal, like version controlled documentation for our governance information and resources as well, along also with the community. And these docs pages will eventually live on the Radicle website. And yeah, we've been working on these for a while now. They're actually getting pretty close to being done. There's just like a few last little details and peer review processes that we want to go through before launching, but we can hopefully see these already at the end of January. Creation of a version controlled governance manual. So this kind of goes back to what I was mentioning earlier. The only like existing like the governance process and how it's stated and like explained is currently living in a discourse post. And there is no existing like formal process of how to update that. And we haven't updated it really since its creation and launch since February 2021. So we want to change that. We want to, and we already have created like a repo, like a governance repo essentially, where a governance manual will live and be able to be updated or like propose updates to by anyone. And the process around this, we've also thought out, and there's like, it's not anyone can just update it. There's like a formal process for updating it, but it is theoretically like open to anyone to suggest changes or update. And then there's just like an approval process by someone from the governance team. But this will be a huge thing, I think, and will be like a really good change in our documentation going forward, and hopefully make like the governance manual or like the governance process a little bit more reliable and like easier to interact with. And then the creation of a proposal directory and template library. So this is also kind of going back to those executable social consensus like the proposal types we were talking about, not only for general governance proposals, but also like just creating like a directory and like a library of templates for anyone who is coming to Radicle and wants to create a proposal for something. They know where to go. They know, because there's different places to apply for funding within Radicle, and there's different types of proposals within those different places, and there's no like formal like library of that right now. So we wanted to create that, and we have. And it also will hold, like right now I have linked also like the process to apply for a Radicle grant, and under like a grant section, and So it's like it's kind of like just like this holistic collection of all DAO template or all DAO proposal types and templates, and this will continue to grow as well. But this is also an exciting addition, and will hopefully make interacting with the governance process a lot easier going forward. And also provide really clear guidelines for what is needed or required in a proposal. So yeah, and then the governance call rhythm. We've been thinking about this. This also will go along with this like monthly cycle that I mentioned earlier as well. You know, right now we're doing these monthly calls, and it's usually a mix of governance proposals and then governance like team and like broader stuff like this, you know, that we're talking about right now. And in the future, we're thinking of just doing monthly proposal calls. So whoever has open proposals that month will have an opportunity to discuss their proposal, people to ask questions live on the call. That will be recorded and shared with the community before the vote, and then the vote. And then so that will happen at each month. And then quarterly calls for more governance team and other updates for like DAO, like broader DAO updates. That's kind of what we're thinking now would maybe be the best rhythm, also just to kind of like save time and people's energy and attention. But yeah, this is also subject to change as well. And yeah, there's also a link to there's a Discord thread on this as well, which I'll be sure to link in the notes. But yeah, so it was kind of a lot, and it wasn't as quick as I wanted it to be, and I apologize. But are there any questions, Louis?
I think you always hear all my questions.
Yeah, okay, cool. Well then, yeah, great. Thank you for hanging in there. It was kind of a lot today. But I appreciate everyone joined, and I hope that everyone was able to at least comprehend a little bit of what was talked about today. If there are any questions, please do feel free to reach out on Discord. I will be posting some notes, some brief notes, and like links to all of the things discussed in this call, along with the recording of the call later this week. And yeah, we will see each other then next month. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.